Hi, this is David Pidgeon. I'm the editor of Mediatel News. Welcome to this, my introduction to a conversation with Simon Kilby, the Chief Revenue Officer at Bauer Media. And this is a really interesting conversation because I describe this as our lockdown special. It almost exclusively looks at how coronavirus, that horrible disease that has impacted almost every facet of human life on planet Earth, has impacted the radio business, and how Simon and his team, I think there's more than 2,000 of them over at Bauer, including many very resourceful technicians, have kept the show on the road. They've been delivering the goods. I've been listening to Scala, which is their relatively new classical station, and yeah, things have had to been conducted differently, but they've pulled it off. It's impressive. So we look into that. We also look at how the commercial roadmap might or might not have been impacted by coronavirus. We also look, and this will really interest you, how the way that we're listening has changed, and what their own data is telling them. So there's some really great stuff in here. So it's about 20 minutes long, and if you've got any questions that you would like answered, then use Twitter, please. Use the hashtag. And we'll try and get them answered for you. But I reckon we're going to pretty much do everything in the next 20 minutes because I leave no stone unturned. So this is David Pidgeon in conversation with Simon Kilby. Welcome, Simon. Thanks for being with us today. How's lockdown going for you?
Well, it's quite surreal, isn't it, David? Yeah, so was it 3 weeks now? My
Who knows?
observation, yeah, exactly. It feels like forever. My observations on lockdown are that I live in Windsor, so we're under the flight path from Heathrow. It's been really quiet, which I've quite enjoyed. Less planes. I've been riding my bike quite a lot, which has been great. And from a work perspective, I think my one big lesson is that video conferencing, which I seem to have done a lot of, is really tiring.
I completely understand, but I've moved over back onto the good old fashioned telephone. I just keep
I
asking
have as
people to
well.
phone me. It
I
means
have
you can
as well.
stretch your legs and walk
Yeah, you
around the
can wander
house.
around. Yes, we're totally aligned on that. Yeah, but
There you
it's
go.
okay. It's okay. Thanks, mate. How
Okay,
about
so
you?
I'm mid-moving house, which is hugely stressful at this weird time. But you know what? We've managed to turn around this events business and turn it into this digital thing,
Which is
and
great.
it's been really good fun. And doing these podcast style interviews has actually also been really good fun.
Good.
So on that note, let's get into this because I think the current lockdown situation presents radio particularly with all sorts of what I like to think as opportunities just based
Yeah.
on my own listening behavior here. But I'd be curious to know just how you see this situation that we're in, how it's impacted the audio landscape more broadly.
Yeah. It is. I guess it's a really interesting time, particularly across radio, but I guess across all media about how people are consuming and what commercial messaging they're taking on the back of that. I think I'm sure the biggest challenge, well, for me and you and for everyone, is that we're now obviously under government guidelines staying at home a lot more than before. While I think it is challenging for everyone, this has, I think, a positive impact on audio. And so we obviously we don't have any radar data from this period, but we do have uh, data back from our Bauer Insiders panel, which is a panel of 5,000 of our consumers that we can tap into to get some immediate feedback. And our feedback is telling us that more people are listening to radio and podcasts than before. So we had the latest findings in last week. And what they're saying is that 91% of people have listened to radio since being on lockdown, which I guess is broadly in line with what Radar says, but 26% are agreeing that they've listened to more radio than before the outbreak. And I think it's really interesting just to think about the benefits of radio that I've kind of, I guess if you work in media, you've known about for years. It's that idea of connection with the outside world, which obviously becomes really pertinent at a time like this. Companionship. I mean, I live on my own, so I've kind of been going through this period for large periods in my house on my own, and actually the radio is just a great companion. You kind of bring the outside world in. particularly if people are socially distancing themselves. It kind of lifts spirits as well, I think, a little bit. Um, I guess it just delivers that intimate connection between broadcaster and listener, which we've always sold radio on. It just feels more heightened now. So to me, it kind of makes sense that people are turning to radio and podcasts for sort of warmth and connection during this time.
Yeah, I've noticed with my own listening behaviour, certainly the sort of like the community spirit you can get
Yeah.
from a radio station, and the ones that we listen to in this household. How many how many radio brands have Bauer got now? It's tons.
Yeah. So we have national brands: Kiss, Magic, Absolute, Planet Rock, Heat, and then obviously we have our network of local stations within the Hit network. So if you take every sub brand that we have, I think it's something like over 60 national radio brands or radio brands in total. So yeah, significant number.
And could you explain what Bauer, as a business, has perhaps been doing differently then, to sort of cope with the lockdown in terms of the way it delivers and the way it
Yeah.
handles itself?
Yeah, well, it did feel like, doesn't it? About 3 weeks ago, we went into sort of full lockdown, but there was that period of time before that we seemed to be moving towards it with almost certainty. And I think there was, not just in our business, but I think a lot of media businesses, a sense of nervousness around how we would operate in a lockdown world. And actually, I have to say, our IT and tech teams have been phenomenal in terms of moving, nearly 2,000 people in Bauer UK to moving pretty much 100% remotely in a matter of days. It's just been an absolutely unbelievable feat of engineering and technology. So whether that's ISDN or IP codecs to smartphone apps, all of our presenters have sort of set up home studios, and they're sort of almost weaving in that home studio aspect to what they do, which has been really quite nice, actually, because I think it makes our listeners feel quite connected to them as well, because they're kind of both in their own homes listening to their favorite radio content in a completely new environment. And I think we've been trying to adapt our content to what's going on as well. An example would be on our Hits Radio network. We have now a hero hour Monday to Friday, when one of our listeners can recommend someone as a kind of hero who's helped them through the lockdown, whether it's someone from the NHS or just a friend or a neighbor. So we're trying to tap into that kind of feeling of community that I think is really prevalent at the moment. Obviously, as well, we've been trying to integrate the government messaging into what we do, kind of stay home, protect the NHS, save lives. So you hear that a lot on air. Um, and actually just some more kind of fun things as well. So the weekend just gone over, Easter weekend, we ran what we called Kiss Fest, which was 30 hours of sort of live music, and we had communities getting involved. So yeah, I think we've adapted, as a lot of media companies have had to, really quickly. One of the positives is that the tech works, which has been great. And then it's just about, I think, trying to reflect the mood of the nation in how we're broadcasting. And all the feedback that we're getting from our listeners is that we've done it really well. So I think, yeah, it's been a challenge, but I think we've risen to it as a business. It's been great.
So I've been listening to Scala actually,
Yeah,
which I was. It's just you sort of there's enough in there in the portfolio to sort of choose something to match the mood at the moment,
exactly.
and then once you're actually in the brand, it's pretty obvious that the presenters were also choosing something to match the mood. So in terms of that radio being very personal, it certainly works. You can go in and test it yourself.
Yeah, totally. It really does feel like that as well, which is, it's always been a great strength of the medium. But as I say, it just feels like that's really coming to the fore at the moment.
So nestled within all this, though, what do you see as sort of like the sort of immediate term threats?
Yeah,
Do you think?
challenges. Well, I think initially we thought it was keeping broadcasting, to be honest. Um,
Yeah.
but say that's gone really well. But there are areas of our business that have been really difficult and challenging. Again, if you look across the board, ad revenue has been really challenged. If you think about our local markets, for example, a lot of the businesses that we work with on a consistent basis are just not open. You know, if you think about restaurants, pubs, retail parks, big retail outlets, you know, family entertainment centers, all these places are not open. So that's obviously been significant challenging. Then you think in our national business, I think one of the challenges has been, you know, we've got lots of long-term sponsorship partners who are on air through this current time, and trying to work with them to get the messaging right, the creative messaging, because I think it has to be nuanced to how people are feeling. And actually, I'm not sure people necessarily want the same overtly commercial messages that they had before. So a lot of our programming teams and a lot of our commercial teams have been working very hard with our commercial partners to get that commercial messaging right and make it feel like our commercial partners are also responding to the current situation and are being reflective about how our listeners are feeling at the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, audiences are up. Obviously, it's but the way that we're listening, as you mentioned, it has changed. But like you would assume that in-car listening would be down,
Yeah,
and so on. But you know, with such a large captive audience, is it hard, do you think, to keep brands spending the money when we're likely to head into like a deep recession? What's the message at the moment to those
yeah.
guys?
It's an interesting point you made about different methods of listening, because again, we don't have any radar, but from our Bauer Insiders panel and data that we have, our listeners are telling us that it's in-car listening is obviously down. You know, the figures say about 58% since this has started. However, on the flip side, the same research shows that 38% of people are listening via connected devices, whether that's smartphone, desktop, laptop, smart speakers. So there's a shift. I think there's a significant shift in listening patterns, and also around podcasts. You know, we've seen again, the same research tells us that 50%, 57% saying they've listened to a podcast while in lockdown, 11% saying they're listening to more podcasts. So I just think that kind of the way that people consuming is changing. Um, but in terms of how we keep, to your question about how we keep brands on board, I think we're trying to keep our message is almost, you know, how can we help? Because this is a totally unprecedented situation for everyone. You know, it's new to us. It's new to our agencies. It's new to our local customers. It's new to our national customers. So we're just trying to help and provide as much insight from our research as we can to help people navigate their way through it. We're also working with the radio centre, because as we've spoken about, you know, we do think there are opportunities for radio in this, and I guess, you know, in any really challenging situation, I think smart media and smart companies are thinking about how they come out of this in better shape. And I think some of the changes around the acceleration of connected listening, smart speakers, provide a real opportunity for us. Obviously, we fairly recently we announced our joint venture with News Octave, which is a digital audio advertising platform. And so the increase in smart speakers, home listening provides real opportunities around that sector of the market. So I guess we're trying to work with all of our customers to provide as much help as we can, because everyone is dealing with a totally new situation.
Do you think this is a time to seek out some new customers that perhaps haven't traditionally used radio? Because there's obviously a move to conduct to do your shopping online, whatever
Yeah,
that is, and have it delivered and so on. Is there room there as maybe the world adjusts to this new normal, to invite those that never tried radio in the past?
yeah, it's really interesting actually, because certainly I think in both areas, you know, if you think about our local business and our national business, there absolutely is. I mean, I've been really impressed with our team's kind of entrepreneurial mindset going into this. So you see some of our local teams, they're just targeting completely new businesses, you know, uh, delivery firms, you know, deep cleaning companies, all these things that we would never have carried before. That they've really been really smart about it. And I think the on the wider point around national as well is that if you think about what radio does offer at the moment, you know, we're broadcasting remotely. We have a really quick creative turnaround. Radio's always really been cost effective, and these factors I think make it an ever increasingly important part of all marketing strategies. I think it's resilient, and the opportunity in this time is because it's powerful, it's intimate, it's trustworthy, and that's why audiences value it. And I think that's why we hope that during this and after this, increasingly commercial partners value it as well. And that's the opportunity for us.
So, would you have had a message to brands that hadn't already adopted an audio strategy? Because audio generally is on the rise. The commercial radios had a couple of like record-breaking years.
Yeah.
Spotify sort of joined in, and instead of eating up the market, it just seems to have grown the market. And the technology exists for us to be able to listen in so many different ways. But not every brand is using it. So what would your message be to those that don't have a sort of a coherent audio strategy?
Yeah, well, I think my message, if they don't, is that they should really get one, because it's a really exciting part of the media marketplace to work in. And I think you mentioned Spotify, and I've had these conversations with Marco, and we certainly don't. We welcome all companies and aspects of the kind of audio ecosystem, because they're creating a different they create value in different ways as part of the same ecosystem. So we believe that Spotify is largely replacing people's CDs collections, but ultimately it's all creating a buzz and a noise around audio that's really positive. And I also think one of the other major reasons why clients should reevaluate if they don't have an audio strategy is that we believe that we are one of the only sectors that actually digital doesn't threaten, but digital enables. If you think about DAB or IP, what that's allowed radio broadcasters to do is diversify and increase the choice for listeners. People can get more access to more quality programming, and listening in new ways provides more choice for listeners, more commercial models for us, and new and interesting ways for customers to engage audiences. It really is an exciting time to be working in our sector.
I'm not sure where anyone's allowed to be thinking very long term at the moment, because
I
just take things like by the day. But if we are allowed to look longer term, what was Bauer's roadmap before COVID-19, and then perhaps how has the coronavirus sort of changed that, or like changed the commercial strategy, if at all?
I don't know if it's changed our commercial strategy. I think we're just in a period of time where we're having to not only think about those kind of long-term plans, but also think about a short-term situation that's been thrust on us. Bauer, not just in the UK but across Europe, firmly believes in the power of audio and radio, and we're taking our business forward in a variety of ways. Thinking about extending the brands that we have. We launched over the last 6 months, as an example, 2 new sub brands of Absolute Radio, 10s and 20s, which takes that brand and extends it further. So we're looking to extend brands. We're looking to launch new brands. You mentioned Scala earlier on. So we launched that last year, and we're looking to acquire. So obviously we are hopefully in the final stages of a process with the CMA around acquisitions we made early last year. So our strategy hasn't changed in terms of, we really fundamentally believe in the strength and the future of audio. Alongside those kind of long-term plans, we're also trying to navigate this short-term crisis that everyone's dealing with. The other point, which we've spoken about as well, is that we firmly believe in the power and the future of digital audio. And we believe that over the next 10 years, the level of listening that's delivered through IP is going to grow exponentially, and that's going to be the next real change within our sector. And that's really exciting, for all the reasons I've talked around new commercial opportunities and new ways of engaging audiences.
Good stuff. We're almost drawing to a close, but perhaps with an audio hat firmly on your head, what are you most excited about doing once all this is hopefully over for everyone?
Well, I'm really excited about going down the pub with my friends. Who thought you'd ever take that for granted?
It's a sad, strange, surreal time, but with the radio company, things are going okay, and we can all look forward to having a beer together once this is over, because I think in many ways this has actually cemented quite a lot of relationships with
It
with
has.
colleagues and all sorts.
Yeah.
It's no longer taking anything for granted.
And hopefully you can connect again with your climbing trip, David.
For any listeners out there that aren't aware, I was due to leave my job on the 1st of May and then head to the Alps for 3 months, and obviously that's not happening now. But I do have a camper van to listen to my radio in. So on that high or low note, I'm not sure which one it is. I say thank you for joining me, Simon, and good luck getting down to that pub.
Thanks, mate. Nice to talk to you.